What is going on, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden, and joining me is the very displeased Michael J. Facci. The Pacers fall 118-114 to the Joel Embiid-less, Paul George-less Philadelphia 76ers in overtime at home in their home opener. Facci, this is not the way the season is supposed to go for the Pacers.
I was sick to my stomach, honestly speechless. They played pretty poorly throughout most of the game, but then they had every chance to win the game before, at the end of regulation. Then they had opportunities to steal the game, potentially in overtime, forced double overtime, but that's not quite how it went down. And, you talk about the players that were out, Joel Embiid, Paul George. I'm sorry, but there is no excuses for the Pacers. When you were opening up at home, you had to have this one.
Yeah, I think when you look at the box score, right, and it's easy to watch a box score, but if you look at the box score, 54 rebounds for the 76ers compared to the 37 for the Pacers, and it felt like that. I mean, I don't know how many times I heard fans yelling in the arena, "Please get a rebound." They were frustrated. It's just like infuriating that the 76ers were allowed to get 20 offensive rebounds in this game to just 7 for the Pacers. And it made a difference in the game. Rick Carlisle, the first thing he said at the podium was, it comes down to rebounding and turnovers. I think the Pacers ended up giving 31 points to the 76ers off turnovers where the 76ers only gave up 19. So there's a 12-point differential there. And then the thing that Rick Carlisle didn't mention was the free throw discrepancy. The Pacers went to the free throw line 34 times, but they only made 23. They left 11 points at the free throw line. So you look at all those areas of the game, it should never have been this close. And that's what's infuriating. It's like you go from getting your butts kicked on national television to the New York Knicks and their home opener, and you come home 36 hours later and you lose in another gut punching way. And to me, losing like this is almost more painful
It
than the
is.
way you lost to New York.
By far. Look, that Knicks game, it was so out of reach in the second half. It was like I was waiting all game against Philly for us to just step up and respond. And I felt like it took way too long. I mean, the first half, I thought this was going to be a game that Pacers would come out the gates hot. I know Tyrese Haliburton started the game off looking to get going, makes the first basket, scores 4 of the first 6. I was like, hey, this is going to be a really good game for Tyrese. And then things just really quieted down. And I felt that the Pacers always kept it close enough, but could never ever pull away at any point. And then towards the end of regulation, I felt like this is where, Aaron Nesmith throws down, a great dunk. He gets fouled. Like the Pacers, they're doing great challenges. Carlisle's working magic, overturning calls. I was like, all right, this is going to go great. And then they had 3 turnovers in a row, 2 of them from Tyrese Haliburton, to just allow Philly to stay in this game. And, I know there's going to be a bunch of negative stuff that we're going to end up dwelling on. I thought the game was over, and Tyrese hits a circus shot from 3 to force overtime. You can make an argument maybe it could have even been a 4-point play, but he sends it to overtime in a shot that I was not expecting. And at that point, I went, you know what? It's been a bad game. Who cares? Forget about it. We're going to take this one in overtime. That was not what happened.
No, and I mean, I want to just go through the sequence here because I have the notes, Facci, of the last 2 minutes for both the fourth quarter and the overtime, just to kind of give you an idea of what happened. So you mentioned it. Nesmith made the and one, gives the Pacers a 3-point lead. On the next possession for the Pacers, with 2 minutes left in the game, Miles Turner misses a three. Looks like an air ball, but the shot clock operators reset the shot clock. Haliburton got the rebound. About 8 seconds went off the clock, and then they realized, oh, shoot, that reset. That shouldn't be the case. So they go to review it, and Nick Nurse just loses his mind during this entire moment. It's a 3-point game, and he picks up a technical foul. The Pacers send Tyrese Haliburton to the free throw line, and he misses. Okay, so now it's, a 3-point game still instead of a 4-point game. Well, thankfully, the very next play, Nembhard makes a bank shot with about a minute 33 left in the game. Sixers come down, Oubre hits a jumper, and it makes it 102-99. Now, Haliburton, like you mentioned, he gets stripped by Eric Gordon. Turnover number 1. Next play down, Nembhard fouls Maxey. He makes both free throws. The next play, Andre Drummond steals the ball from Andrew Nembhard, and Caleb Martin makes a 2-point shot. Now it's a 1-point game. The next play for the Pacers, Andre Drummond does it again. He blocks or strips Haliburton, and that's another turnover. So it's 3 straight turnovers in a row on those offensive possessions for the Pacers when you had a 3-point lead. And now all of a sudden you're up 5, and the Sixers go on a 6-0 run because Maxey got fouled. Excuse me. Yeah, Maxey got fouled, made both free throws, and it's 105-102 after you had the Caleb Martin made two, the free throws from Maxey before that, and then the Oubre jumper. So now you basically have an 8-0 run here or is that right? No, it's a 6-0 run. I can't
Yeah.
remember. No, 8-0 run, 8-0 run because it was
You're right.
102-97.
And
8-0 run.
Haliburton. Mhm.
Yeah, 8-0 run by the 76ers. Now the Pacers, desperation time, you called it. Haliburton throws up that prayer of a three, and I couldn't believe he made it. I
I
was like,
couldn't believe it. Uber was
it,
all over them.
it literally felt like once he made that three, okay, the basketball gods are in Indiana. Things are kind of going their way. Flip over to overtime, right? And you get to those final 2 minutes. The first play for the Pacers, Miles Turner is called for an offensive foul on a screen. Maxey hits a layup. The next play, Turner is fouled by Oubre. What does he do? He goes 1-2 from the free throw line. 112, 111. The next play, Maxey misses a layup. Nembhard gets the rebound. Then Nembhard misses a 19-footer, and Drummond gets the rebound. Then Maxey makes a layup, makes it 114 to 111. The next play, Nembhard drives at the basket. Maxey fouls him, and initially they called it out of bounds off Nembhard. Pacers challenge. They win the review. Nembhard's at the free throw line with a chance to tie it up or make it make it a 1-point game here. It's 114, 111. He goes 1-2 from the free throw line. So now you're down 114, 112. Pacers foul Kelly Oubre because they have to foul to stop the clock. He ends up going 1-2 from the free throw line. It's 115, 112. Philadelphia is like, you know what? We're not going to give the Pacers a chance to get a three off because we just saw what Haliburton did. We're going to foul them. Nesmith, the only guy that made two free throws in the clutch this whole entire time for the Pacers, he goes 2 for 2. It's 115, 114. Pacers then have to foul again, stop the clock. Maxey goes 1 of 2. So now the Pacers have life. It's 116, 114. And Caleb Martin makes the dumbest decision.
I
He
was
fouls
stunned with that.
Halliburton, thinking they're up 3. He fouls him, sends
Like, you know,
Halliburton to the line. 116, 114. The game is being handed to you on a silver platter. And Halliburton chokes the first free throw, misses the second one intentionally. Pacers don't get the rebound. They foul Maxey. Maxey hits both free throws, and the game's over. So, how many times did I say turnover? I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 times in
maybe
that
just as
segment. How
many
many
times as
times?
missed free throws.
Yeah,
Exactly. I
it's
mean,
the same thing. Turnovers and missed free throws. But let me ask you this. What was one thing I didn't say during that entire 2-minute stretch for both the fourth quarter and overtime?
I'd say the Pacers making a basket, basically. I mean, I don't know. It just seemed all negative. I just felt like nothing was really going their way.
Let me give you the answer. The answer is Pascal Siakam. I didn't
Yep.
say his name once. The
No, you didn't.
entire stat line that he had in that entire segment was he fouled Kelly Oubre
Mhm.
to stop the clock. That was what he did. And I was a little bit disappointed because I thought Siakam had a very good game. He was playing much, much better defensively. Caitlin Cooper even tweeted it out. This is probably the best defensive version we've seen of Siakam since he was traded to Indiana. He was switching on to Maxey, staying in front of him throughout the game. And I thought, man, this guy looks really good. Had an efficient night from the field, but there was one play the Pacers ran like a little pick and roll. Halliburton hit Siakam wide open at the elbow, nobody in sight, and he passed it up to the corner. And I'm thinking to myself, why is he being so passive? So I was just a little bit disappointed that your veteran leader, the guy that you traded for, the guy that's an all NBA player, all star level player, was not involved. And I will say this too. Too often, I know that Halliburton did get stripped twice. I don't want Nembhard with the ball in his hands at the end of the game. I want it to be Haliburton every time. You live by Haliburton, you die by Haliburton. I don't want it to be Nembhard every time with the ball in his hands, especially when you got Siakam out there. So I know I've rambled a lot, but that was my big takeaway from those final 2 minutes in the last, fourth quarter and overtime setting. Is just like, where's Pascal Siakam? Because he was good in this game.
When you're talking about where's Pascal Siakam and kind of disappearing, especially in overtime. On the other side, Tyrese Maxey finished with 45. He had 24 of them in the fourth quarter and overtime.
Yeah.
24 points in the fourth and overtime. He knew what the assignment was. The assignment was Paul George and Joel Embiid are out. He needs to pick up the slack, and he had no problem doing that, putting up 32 shots. He did what was needed of him. The Pacers fumbled every opportunity that came their way. It's very, very disappointed. And you talked about Tyrese Haliburton, three turnovers. He only had 2 assists.
Yeah.
How often does Haliburton have more turnovers than assists? I mean, that's just so rare. But for 2 of the 3 to come down at the very end of the game is just very costly turnovers. And when he missed that free throw, I mean, I gasped. It was dramatic. I put my hand over my mouth and I ran back. And my wife went, what happened? What's the matter? And I was like, babe, just please, like, it's basketball. Everything's all right. But I was just, my jaw almost hit the ground because Haliburton's a really good free throw shooter. But I don't know what it was of just like in key moments tonight outside of that big 3-pointer. Got to give him credit for the 3-pointer to force overtime. But the turnovers when you needed it most, the missed free throw when you really needed it, it's just those are routine plays that he makes. And I don't know. He's got to be beating himself up. I don't want to beat him up too hard, but it was very uncharacteristic. And right now, I think this fan base has every right to feel really worried about this team right now.
Yeah, I mean, Halliburton goes 2 of 5 from the free throw line, and I understand
That's
one of those
insane.
was a missed on
Yes.
purpose free throw, but still, 2 of 4, you're not getting to the free throw line that much, and you missed a critical technical foul from Nick Nurse. And when the game was in the balance right there to tie it up, go to a double overtime, whatever, you can't make that one. Miles Turner, though, 4 of 8 from the free throw line in this game. And to me, everybody, if you miss one free throw, like, Siakam missed one, Nimard missed one, Toppin missed one, Mathurin missed one, okay, I get that. But like when you're constantly going like 1 for 2, it's not a good sign. And I mean, I feel like we talked about this on Friday, right? Like this team, Tyrese Haliburton, he doesn't look the same. Well,
Doesn't
Tony East asked him after the game, and he said, do you feel like yourself? And he said, no. Didn't give anything else,
good
but
answer.
he
Right
was
answer too.
he was dejected up there on the stage. He was mad, and he said that he would be thinking about that free throw that he missed for the entirety of the night. But they do have a game tomorrow, or as you're listening to this, probably, this evening against the Orlando Magic. Second out of a back-to-back against one of the best defensive teams in the league. We already talked about this on Friday. It's not going to be easy.
No.
You needed to win this game. This was one of those gimme games, right? This is one of those games where Philadelphia, they have enough talent with who's on their roster, even if Embiid and George don't play to win, which is what we clearly saw tonight. But the Pacers probably played about an average game from start to finish. They played about a C level, and they're not playing at that A level that we saw at times last year. So yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement. But to me, it was like trying to figure this out because we talked about it. Mathurin was the MVP for the first 2 games. This game looked terrible, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. Got pulled in the second quarter because of how bad he was defensively. Jarris Walker goes into the game. Carlisle was pulling Isaiah Jackson out early because he didn't look good. Carlisle is reaching here, trying to find the right combinations. And there was times when you saw good combinations of players, but it's just not been consistent enough. And I think that is the biggest problem.
No, it really is. And Mathurin he just didn't have it tonight. And we talked about it. Look, he had 2 of the 3 games he's been really good, but tonight it just was not there. I felt like at times, there were certain guys that were stepping up. Like we talked about Aaron Nesmith towards the end of regulation. I just felt like was just making big plays, big rebounds, things like that. He finishes with 7 rebounds. I felt like Nemhard from an assist to turnover ratio, 8 assists to 1 turnover. But when you talk about not wanting the ball in his hands, he took a late shot. It was in the corner. I don't know if it was either a 3-pointer or just a long jumper in the corner that didn't go in. And I don't feel great about Nemhard taking those shots with, when you need that basket towards the end of the game. I think that was towards the end of regulation. But either way, just didn't go well. And I felt like for this team, you see 114 on the box score. They scored 9 points in overtime. The Indiana Pacers have not looked like that explosive offense that we saw all of last year, where, even if they were losing, they might score, I don't know, 120, 125 and give up 130. They've, I guess, been a better defensive team this year, but the offense has gone out the window. And I feel like that's our calling card. We know we were never going to be this top 10 defensive unit by any means, but the expectations are that you're probably a top 2, if not top 3 offensive, unit in the NBA. And so far, we just haven't seen them click the way that we want them to. And I just feel like it's been guys taking rotations in certain quarters where so and so's had a good quarter, but then kind of disappeared for another quarter or two. And we need this team to really get into a rhythm. And that's just, I mean, we're seeing 23 points in the first quarter, 20 points in the third. I mean, these are quarters where everything's just disappearing and falling apart. And right now, this was the soft game on the schedule. And now that you blew this one, we talked about how hard the schedule is. I am definitely turning up the reason for concern.
Yeah, I mean, and it's okay to be concerned, right? Because this team's not playing good basketball. And you mentioned it, the offense has not looked good. It's been very I don't know. I don't know if it's because of how many fouls were called in this game that there was no flow to the game, right? Because I think everything's like by game basis, and it's been a blowout and against the Knicks. It was a weird game against Detroit, first game of the season. Then this game you had, I don't know. I'm not used to seeing games last 3+ hours,
It
right?
was a long game. It
Yeah.
was not a lot of fun. I'm going to be honest.
And that's what I'm saying. It was kind of it was kind of like a slugfest, right? Because you're just taking punches. You're at the free throw line. At one point, there was like I think 25 to 24 free throw call. Like that's 50 free throws that you're stopping the game for, plus all the amount of turnovers that were there.
A lot of
It just
reviews.
was a what was that?
A lot of reviews, especially towards the
Yes.
end. And the Pacers, they were coming out on top of them, but I felt like towards the end, I mean, there must have been like three things that they were reviewing in the final 2 minutes of regulation dragged on, and to not come out on top was a bit painful.
Yeah, I will say this. Like, Neesmith's kind of been like one of these guys that hasn't really stood out this season. But when he came back into the fourth quarter,
He put
I
it
thought
down.
he made a big difference because he ended up having that dunk, right? We talked about that with the and one. He also fought really hard to get that offensive rebound, ends up getting a foul call because of the new review that they have put in place this season. If they go to review if the ball was out on somebody else or not, they can actually reverse it and say, well, the ball was actually out on Neesmith, but it's because Caleb Martin fouled him.
Yep.
So he's on the free throw line
Big.
for 2 shots. And they had that happen twice, the Nemhard one and the Neesmith one. And I just felt like Neesmith was really in there being that dog that you want, doing the little things, the scrappy stuff that might not always show up on the box score. So I thought that he looked better at the
Mhm.
end of the game and was really trying his best. But, I felt personally like too often, especially in the first half, probably some in the second half too, but like guys like Eric Gordon, who are like on the tail end of their career. They're I don't know how old Eric Gordon is, but he's got to be between 35, 40 years old.
Yeah,
This
he's probably like
guy
36, 37.
he
Yeah,
don't have the same first step that he once did, but he's blowing by every defender on the Pacers perimeter, getting into the paint and just doing it with ease. It was like, why can't they stop this guy? And I know Haliburton was on him at times, Mathurin was on him at times, but it was just a little bit, frustrating to watch because it's like you're wanting to see this group take that loss against New York personal. Wake up call. Come out here, punch Philadelphia in the mouth. And they didn't. They kind of were reactive instead of proactive. And it's like they come out really strong in the third quarter. Things look good. And then the Sixers going like a 16-1 run before the Pacers make it a 1 point game at the end of the third. Like that was a great opportunity there for the Pacers to kind of put this game away, but instead they let Philadelphia creep in and just go on this massive run, and they had no answer for them. So it's everything is discombobulated. The chemistry is discombobulated. The offensive flow is discombobulated. The defense is very up and down roller coaster type, esque defense because it's good a couple of plays and then god awful the next play. So I'm not sure exactly where they go from here, Foch, but they definitely can't get much worse than they have been in the first 3 games.
no, they really can't. I just think that if you don't get up for your home opener against a hobbled 76ers team, and maybe that was a little bit of their mentality of overlooking the 76ers due to Embiid and Paul George being out, because I've always felt like Indiana circled the bigger games. But for tonight, it's just like, let's put it this way. Tyrese Haliburton averaged 11 assists last year. I think it was like 10.9 to be exact. Through 3 games, he has 11 assists total. He has 11 assists and 7 turnovers. That is not Tyrese Haliburton Pacer basketball. And I just feel like too many times, yeah, we've talked about it. He'll dribble the ball up, pass it up, and then he's going around and he's by the perimeter. And then that's why you're seeing like Andrew Nemhard have more, I think, has more assists at this point. I mean, 8 assists alone today. Pascal Siakam's had more assists on the season. It's just, I feel like if Tyrese Haliburton is your, I mean, I can't even call him our third leading assist guy. McConnell had 4, and then Mathurin had 2. Ben Shipperd had 2. Miles Turner had 2. It's like, yeah, that just can't happen. Tyrese can't be, tied for 6th on your team in assists. He is the engine that gets this team going, and I just felt like he has not been making his teammates better this year is what I would say. And a lot falls on your shoulders when you are the star player. If you want to be treated like a star, you got to produce like a star. And in that 3-pointer where he forced overtime, yeah, that was great. Hey, that's our franchise guy. Hit the big shot against Detroit as well. But it's like, I know he's going to be hard on himself, but I think he needs to really lock in right now because if he was 100% locked in, I don't think he's missing these free throws. And that's where it's like you could live with some turnovers. Turnovers happen. Free throws, that's what you control, and I think that he always does come out better. But man, we're just I don't want to say we're running out of time. We're only 3 games in, but with the way that the schedule looks, it's like that game against Orlando, you come out flat. I am like I'm pushing the panic button on this season right now. If
Yeah,
we
I
come
mean,
out,
we had him close to 50-51 wins, right? I think at the beginning of the season. It might be closer to 42-43 at this point, which
yeah,
would still probably be good enough to make the playoffs and be a top 8 seed in the Eastern Conference. I mean, they could regress in terms of total wins and still make the playoffs. I mean, as long as they're hitting their stride at the right time, I think that's all that really matters for this
exactly.
season because
Yes,
the record is what it is. You want to see improvement, but at the same time, here's what I really think it comes down to, and I probably should have let off of this because I actually thought about this before we came on here, but as we are kind of recapping the game, it just allowed for me to kind of go in the sequence of the game and how it went. If you go back, Tyrese Haliburton was traded here in 21-22, right? The Pacers were terrible, no expectations. We're going into a rebuild. So summer of 22-23, Mathurin, Nimhard are your draft picks. Kendall Brown's a draft pick. Once again, no expectations. It's just we're going to develop and see what we have. They win 25 games that year, right? So, or was it 35? No, it's 25.
25, then 35 next year.
Yeah, then 35 the next year. And then all of a sudden they get Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd in the next draft. And you're thinking, okay, what are expectations for the next season? Well, then all of a sudden they jump from 35 wins to 47 wins and they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. So this team went from we're going to be bad, but we're going to develop. We're going to be bad, we're going to develop to oh, wow, we might actually be better than we thought we were. Let's go and trade for Pascal Siakam. And so they go into this season with expectations drastically higher. Everybody has a different role now. It's not oh, let's do our best and have fun and go prove it to people how special we can be. It's more like oh, yeah, everybody knows how good we are now. How are we going to respond to this? And I think that's the biggest reason why it's been slow to start out because this is a different type of pressure that probably Tyrese is feeling than he's ever felt in his career. He's never had to feel the burden of, oh my God, I've got to lead this team to 47 plus wins once again, get to the, top 4 seed in the East so we have a home court advantage in the playoffs. Like that's not been how he's approached each season. It's been more like, all right, let's go out there, let's have fun. Whatever happens, happens. It's never been like, oh, we have these high expectations now of what we want you to do. It's been like, okay, let's go out there and see what we can do. So I think that is where everything is at. And it's not just Tyrese, but because he is the leader of this team, he's the one that gets talked about the most. And because he missed the critical free throw tonight that could have tied this game, put it to double overtime, you got to bring it up. But it's just I think he has put so much pressure on himself to lead this team. And I feel like he's still trying to juggle how to correctly lead with the expectations they have. And this is where you really need Pascal to step up, take some of the brunt off of Tyrese and say, you know what, young fella, I've been here before. I've won a championship. Let me show you what it takes to lead. It's hard, but I'm here to help you. And don't go quiet in the final 4 minutes of overtime and in the fourth quarter. This is where Pascal has to be number 2, and it can't just be Tyrese out there trying to create for himself all the time. I want to see more of a balanced attack between those two, especially when you look at the numbers that Pascal had tonight. I mean, incredibly efficient numbers, played 40 some minutes, might have been a little tired, but still, you have to go through your guys. That's the reason you pay them.
Respect is earned, not given. Who cares what we did last year? That's irrelevant now. It's like it comes down to what are we going to do this year? And I feel like Indiana, we've always wanted like this respect, like oh, hey, they're sleeping us. We're an underdog. Yeah, well, we're back to being the underdogs because right now we haven't proven that we could be talked about as the league's best this year early on. There's nothing that the Pacers have done that have wowed anybody. I mean, this is how it is. The second Tyrese missed that free throw, people started, tweeting up a storm at me and texting me all this. He's not a star. It's like people they're looking for Indiana now to come down because a lot of people think last year was a fluke. So yeah, that pressure, it's real. It is real, and we got to see how they can juggle it. But this is what it's all about. It's like yeah, it's all fun and games when you're hoping that maybe you could make the play in. We've tasted more success than that. It's time to prove it. I think Siakam. I think that we haven't seen the best of Siakam yet. I'm waiting for one of those explosions. It will happen. I don't think we've seen the best of Turner yet. We saw a really good quarter out of Turner where he had that 16 points. I think it was against Detroit, but we haven't seen it throughout consistently. I think this team has far from played their best. The best is yet ahead. At least I hope so, because we haven't seen too much to be excited about. But early on, if this isn't the wake up call that you need, I don't know what it is. It's two wake up calls in a row. It's like I'm almost waiting to hear like, well, Carlisle's really frustrated with this group. It's like, yeah, that's I mean, that's like asking, is the sun gonna rise in the morning? He's been frustrated. It's time to respond. And I think the Orlando Magic right now, I think it's 14 back-to-backs on the season. Hey, we're in the midst of it. Let's respond against a team that we also expect to see in the playoffs that is just as young as we are. Basically, they're in that same type of not a championship team, but also trying to prove yourself. I think it's a good test.
It is a good test. And I will say this too, like if you want to be like, oh, the sky is not falling yet, it's only game three, right? Like Philadelphia, that's their first one of the season. Now they're 1-2. Milwaukee, they lost tonight
And
to the
also the
Brooklyn
Bulls.
Nets.
Oh wow, they lost to the. I must have missed that. I saw when
Yeah.
they lost to the Bulls. Those are two bad losses right there.
Yeah, and so and they just look totally out of sync without Chris Middleton. And you're talking about a team that's got Giannis, who's an MVP level candidate. So it's not just Indiana going through some early, parts of the season where they're really struggling. Like, no, this is a Milwaukee Bucks team that has a lot of expectations too to kind of prove people wrong, get themselves back to the top of the Eastern Conference because they're a team that's got Dame, they've got Giannis, they've got Middleton, Lopez, Portis. Like they've got a veteran heavy team that should have chemistry because they played together. But, sometimes it just takes guys to get going a little bit. I think the Pacers being young and, trying to prove themselves in previous seasons, like there were no expectations. It was just like, let's go out there and have fun. And I said that like about 3 minutes
Yeah,
ago, but I just want to reiterate that point because I do think it matters a lot. And expectations are hard to reach sometimes.
they
And
are.
that's why when we both predicted at least 50 wins, we probably were a little bit underestimating how difficult it would be with this team kind of coming in as, the hunted versus the hunter. So they're not the ones that are totally getting hunted, but they're still on people's radars where they're not just sneaking up on people. And we've heard that talk all off season long, like, hey, they're not sneaking up on anybody, but now we're actually seeing it. So I would be curious to see if they continue to struggle, what kind of changes Carlisle will make. And I'm sure we'll probably discuss that at some point if they do get bad enough where we have to get to that point. But right now, whether you like Carlisle or not, this is a veteran coach that knows how to interact with NBA players and knows how to coach NBA players to get the best out of them. So the Pacers would not be where they were last season without a head coach like Rick Carlisle. So I'm trusting that Carlisle is going to do the right thing to figure this out. He might not say things publicly to the media, but I do believe that he's gonna iron out all the wrinkles. And yeah, he can't rebound, he can't play defense for him, but he can change up some stuff if he needs to, if this is getting a little bit too complacent.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, they might have to make some changes at some point. I don't think there's a lot of tricks you can really pull out of the bag. I don't think it's going to be like last year where I remember they inserted, Neesmith and Jalen Smith into the starting lineup, and that was like a big change. I remember, but like right now you're looking at this and it's like, I mean, you can make a couple of changes and see, but if you're already going to make some lineup changes by game four, it shows that there is definitely some worry. I think that tonight you can't blame Carlisle because I thought he had some really good challenges that we talked about earlier that were won, that were actually at very key points in the game. But you're not beating anybody if you give up 20 offensive rebounds. The amount of second chance points that Philly got in this game is insane. You talked about it earlier. The 31 points off the 19 turnovers. 19 turnovers. You played a sloppy game at just about all levels. And, I don't want to say, and they were still in it. It's just that, no, it shouldn't have been a close game in the first place. Just going into this game, Vegas had the Pacers favored by 9.5, meaning that
Wow.
they expected the Pacers to, pretty much win this game by double digits. And to lose by four in overtime, it's a little embarrassing. It is, especially in front of the home crowd that showed up on an NFL Sunday, to really say, hey, all right, it's time for some Pacer basketball. And I think that right now, this team, they need to get it together because this fan base is they're right by them, but we don't want to lose belief because, like you said, the expectations are high and we're dreaming big this year. And I'm not ready to be kicked down to reality.
No, and I totally agree with you, Facci, because it's easy to overreact when you have tough losses back to back, right? And be emotional about it, especially if you're a fan that's just like so mad. Like, I got people I'm arguing with on Twitter right now because they're mad Mathurin was benched, and then Nembhard never gets benched. But it's like Nembhard's proven himself as a defender, where Mathurin has not consistently proven himself, and so that leash is shorter because Mathurin's deficiencies on defense have been much, much, much worse. And if you think that they're not, then you're just not watching the games correctly. And Mathurin's gotten better. We talked about it, how he's been the best two players the first two games, and tonight he just looked bad. He just did not look great. So it's not because Carlisle's got a short leash on him. It's just he didn't play good. And so, and he responded well in Detroit when he got benched. So I think that it's just a matter of like you're going to have ebbs and flows with every player on the roster. And, I think that with Nembhard and Neesmith and those guys, like their defense has been proven throughout playoff runs that they're going to get a little bit more of a leash because of the respect that they have from their coaches. So anything else on the game, or are we good to wrap it up?
No, I'd say good to wrap, good to put a bow on this one.
All right, we're going to close things out with a little bit more of a fun thing. We got about 5 minutes. We won't go super in depth on this, but we're doing our top five list. We didn't have a chance to bring it back last week, but we did the top five WWE songs a couple of weeks ago, and shared why we like those songs. And Facci gave us a great Triple H story and things like that. So if you haven't heard that one, go back and listen. It was a good one. But we're going to be doing the top five sports logos. Now, this is not based on what everyone else thinks. These are like our top five favorite and why we like them. So my list is really random, but I am kind of curious. So we'll just go through this quickly. Facci at number five, who do you got?
Number five, I got the old school 90s Mighty Ducks logo. I felt like
Nice.
it's got the mask with the two hockey sticks that are crisscrossed. It's purple and green colors, like just from like the movie. Like I always felt like that was just like so 90s and just like a really cool logo. I've never been a hockey guy, but anytime I see that, I think it's like almost like it's just like a retro for the culture type of logo that people will still rock to this day.
No, I mean that's a good one. I was definitely when I was doing my research today and thinking about ones I liked, I was like, "Ooh, I really like that one." So I'm glad you put it on the list. Did not make my list. For me at number five, I've got the Los Angeles Rams, and here's why I like it because back, in 1948 is when they first started doing this. When they had the leather helmet, somebody like painted them on the side of their helmet. They painted that horn from the Ram, and they kept that logo for a long time. I think it was from like the 1950s to the 1990s. They had it with like the blue and the yellow horn, and I think it's really cool because when you look at a team like it has that really cool helmet, I love the horns on the side on both sides. I just think it really stands out to me. It's iconic. Now they only had the helmet with the horns as their actual logo from like 1989 to 1994, I believe. So it wasn't like a long time. They've actually had different versions of the Ram. They even moved to St. Louis, and they were like that navy and Vegas gold, whatever it was. And I didn't like that version as much. I like the royal blue and the yellow. I don't like the new moderation of it as much. Looks a
Mhm.
little too cartoonish for me, but I just think it's iconic. When you see a football player out there with those horns on his helmet, you know exactly who he's playing for. So that's why I'm going with the LA Rams.
Oh, definitely. My high school, we were the Rams, so I could definitely that was our logo. It's a fresh logo, so
Mhm.
I could definitely see. I'm with you on that one. Number four on my list, I have the '90s Charlotte Hornets, like the Hornet with the purple and teal colors. Like I feel like that is always just another one where I remember it's like I had like a Charlotte Hornets hat at one point. A lot of people had like the starter jackets. Like it's just something that I feel like to this day you can see people wearing.
No, I like the Hornets colors a lot. It's pretty neat. That was such a unique 90s thing. So I do have some 90s stuff here on my list in a little bit, but for my next one, I'm sticking with LA, but I'm going with the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is probably the only classic one that I have. I love the LA hat. I think Ice Cube always wears one, right? But it's really cool how they have the L and the bottom of the L cross through and make the like cross for the A, right? Where it goes across. I don't know how you say that, but like when you draw your A and you put the line across, like they
Yeah.
connect the letters. I think it's really cool. The Dodgers with the cursive writing, with the baseball, with the red. I mean, it's just there's a lot of cool stuff going on with the LA Dodgers. And Maybe I'm just in the moment because Freddie Freeman is still in my mind after that massive walk-off grand slam in the 10th. And, I'm just gonna say, they already beat the best team in New York, so now they're just playing the B team right now. So
Hey, maybe, maybe.
yeah, so they feel pretty confident in who they are, but I do like the Dodgers classic logo. That's the only probably classic one I'm going with. But they were originally Brooklyn, obviously, but the LA version is my favorite of that logo. I think it's pretty sick.
Oh yeah, super classic. And coming into this, I was asking you, are we doing our favorite or are we doing like the most iconic? And I feel like, the Dodgers logo is definitely a very iconic
Yeah.
classic logo. Next on my list, I have Miami University, the U. I feel like it's just something that is, people can either throw up the U or you could just, if you see that logo, you know exactly what it is. Maybe it's the fact that Miami is relevant again in college football. They're having a really good year, but just the colors, the orange and green. I always think of like those early, teams in like the early 2000s that was just like stacked and won a national championship in 2001. So just pretty. It's up there on my list, I'd say.
The Ricky Williams era was a real thing. I mean,
Oh, Ricky Williams was at Texas.
was he at Texas?
He
He
was.
went to the Dolphins. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah, that's what you're thinking of.
Who was on that Miami team? Was that Reggie Wayne's team?
Reggie Wayne was on the team. Andre Johnson, like Sean Taylor, on Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee. There was just Santana Moss. I mean, just endless amounts of talent. Andre Johnson was on one of those teams. Just so many NFL players. They were just so stacked, undefeated. Beat Ohio State in the national championship. Just like a forever legendary team.
That is a legendary team. And part of the reason why I was thinking about Miami is because for my number three, I have the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, all right, all right.
Okay, how can you not love this logo? The aqua color dolphin with the Miami helmet on the dolphin with the orange M.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wears bright aqua and orange in any sport except the
No?
Dolphins. And it's iconic. I love it. I think of Ace Ventura when I think about it as well,
Yeah,
just
definitely,
because of
definitely.
that classic movie. But it's just like Dan Marino, his version of that was good. I don't like the new one as much. Uh, it's a new modern version of the dolphin versus the old dolphin, if
Oh,
you
I
look
thought
at
you
it.
meant Ace Ventura, and I was about to be like, "Oh,
No.
that must be awful." Like I did not know they made another one, but thank you. I was getting a little bit nervous.
Yeah, and I've even liked when they had the orange jerseys, right, with the helmets. Like those looked really cool. Like it's just a bright orange with that aqua color. Because I looked up the actual color name to make sure I had it right, and so that's why I just love the color combinations. It's very unique, and that dolphin logo, like you know exactly who that team is once you see it. It is iconic a little bit, but it's also very cool. Just because who else would you be seeing with a dolphin with a football helmet on? So I love the colors and they pop really well.
No, they really do. I think it's the Dolphins have always had some pretty cool jerseys. Next on my list at number two, maybe I'm a little bit biased. I'm going with the Denver Broncos. I've always loved the color scheme of like that, navy blue with like you got the white Bronco. It's got like the orange, whatever you want to call it for it is for a Bronco. I always think that that's just been like a really cool logo that is just always classic to me. And yes, I am a Broncos fan, so call me biased, whatever it is, but anytime I see that logo, I always think it's fresh.
I was a little bit surprised you didn't say the iconic Denver Broncos logo during the John Elway era.
That is what I have in my head. That is definitely the one that I'm talking about. So I'm talking about like that 1998 John Elway, Terrell Davis, like when they're winning the Super Bowls, like that. That's what I definitely think of.
I'm thinking of more of the younger John Elway with the D with
Oh
the
no,
Bronco
no, no!
coming
I'm
out.
not going
I
with
love
that one.
that.
Yeah, that's pretty classic. I'm talking like late '90s logo.
Yeah, no, and I get that. It's probably more nostalgia for you too because
Yeah.
that was a sick team, but they do pop blue, orange, white. Hard not to like that. Number two for me, we're going to Canada and we're going to the NBA. The Vancouver Grizzlies, Facci.
Okay. Okay.
The grizzly bear cartoon with the massive claws gripping the basketball with my hunched between the bold, bulky 3D turquoise lettering of Grizzlies with a black outline and bronze undertones to match the bear. I mean, it's amazing, Facci. They also used red lettering for the Vancouver part above it. I mean, it was kind of hard to read what city they were from on their jersey because there was so much going on there, but you knew they were the Grizzlies because that bear was probably the most intimidating cartoon bear I've ever seen in my life. And if you see the claws on that thing, like I know that the Memphis Grizzlies have brought these throwbacks back this season. John Morant and Zach Edey kind of put out a little bit of a promotion for those, and I love those pictures. And I'm like, this logo is sick, and I think it's a little bit slept on based on what other logo is up in Canada for the NBA. And I think this one actually, to me, is more intimidating than the other one.
Yeah, and look, I don't know if that other Canada team is next on your list. That's where I thought you might have been going because everybody loves that logo. But when I think of this Memphis Grizzlies logo, I think of when I was young, maybe like I don't know, 7 years old or something. I had an NBA bed sheets. It was bed sheets with pillowcases of all the logos on there, and it's like I always think of like the Grizzlies and the Hornets and the Raptors and like the Magic and like all those fun, very animated logos of the 1990s. I think that Grizzlies one is definitely fresh, and I think if those teams in Memphis, Vancouver had been a little bit better, I think there was no one to really like rock that jersey of back then, and I think that would have been probably even more classic. But number one on my list, it screams 90s to me. I love the logo. I think it's a very fresh logo. It's just a Chicago Bulls logo. I mean, maybe it's just associated with Michael Jordan back then, but it's like that logo. I don't know who didn't have some sort of Bulls merchandise back then, and I just think that the Chicago Bulls logo is one of the most recognizable logos out there, and it's just always like you can't mess this logo up. You don't need to change it. It's just perfect the way it is.
Yeah, what's funny for me is like ever since I saw that thing on on Twitter about if you turn the Bulls
Oh
logo
yeah,
upside down,
that's
it,
crazy. It's like a
I said,
robot.
okay, I don't know if I can pick this one anymore. It's a little bit creepy for me now, but it is
Yeah,
a cool logo. It definitely is iconic. Probably your most iconic, I would say, of all the ones you
yeah.
picked.
I would definitely say so.
And it's a great logo. I don't think I ever owned anything that was Michael Jordan-esque or Bulls-esque because I hated the Bulls growing up as a Pacer fan. Like I could not support that, but it is a pretty sick logo. And I'll give you credit. I'm not a big red fan in terms of like my favorite color, but like that red is just so
Yeah.
attractive and how it pulls you. So I love it. And of course, Bulls in red as well. Like when they see red, they get mad, and this bull is angry.
hmm
So it's a very intimidating bull. So I'll give you that for your number one. My number one's probably not as iconic as any other ones I've said before, but I think it's literally the best ever use of lettering for a logo.
What do you got?
We're talking about the Milwaukee Brewers, okay?
Oh, interesting.
The Milwaukee Brewers have a gorgeous logo where they use the B and the M to make a glove for their logo. And they're obviously a baseball team. So the fact that their letters can be made into a glove and they have the ball in there, and they've had versions of it with the Navy and the Vegas gold, which I don't like as much, kind of similar to my Rams stuff. It's the blue and yellow that they had back in 1978 to 1993, and they still use different versions of it, but it's awesome. I think it's the best logo of all time just because of how they use like the positioning of the letters to make what sport they're playing. You don't see a lot of teams do that, and I don't think there's any team I've ever seen do it in any other sport. So for me, it's just like head and shoulders above the rest. And when I got that flat bill hat back when I was in high school, I thought it was the sickest hat I'd ever seen in my life. So that for me is why I have it number one, Facci. But I don't know if you've seen that logo or not, but I love it.
I'm coming clean right now because I have it pulled up right now. I have never noticed that it is an M and a B. I always just thought it was a glove with a baseball in the middle. And now that I see that, I'm like, wow, that is some great artwork. Like just hidden over there. I'm sure it's one of those that once it's pointed out to you, you can never not notice it again. But yeah, in terms of like being able to be creative, I would say very, very creative to be able to have your letters form an image that, just goes hand in hand with the sport that you're playing.
Yeah, it's very similar to like the arrow in FedEx that's kind of hidden.
Yeah, exactly. Once that's pointed out, you can never not see that.
Yep, exactly. And I didn't notice it for the longest time as a kid,
Yeah.
and someone told me, and I was like, no way.
hmm
And I'm like, man, that's crazy. So it's just great marketing skills, and I like it. But anyway, we went a little bit long on that, but we're gonna wrap things up. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed that. Let us know what your top five sports logos are in the comment section below. And Pacers basketball, they play the Magic on Monday nights. We'll be back tomorrow for a game recap on that. But Facci, any final words before we sign off?
Man, I want to forget this game ever happened today. Honestly, this was just a rough one. I'm really hoping that the Pacers respond. You don't need any more bulletin board material. You just got to get yourselves ready. You got to lock in. You got to take it personal because I know they know what this schedule looks like. At this point, you got to have this one against Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to say you have to have it, but you need to play better. You need to show
Exactly.
improvement, right? It's just I don't want to have expectations now because my expectations for this team, I just don't know if I can trust them. It's kind of like I'm walking into every game just like, what team are we going to get? I'm kind of guessing. So I'll just be excited to see what they look like tomorrow. And thankfully, I'll be able to sit on my couch and be a little bit more relaxed compared to being at the game, at the media table. So anyway, I love going to the games, not complaining. I'm just saying it's a little bit of a different view when you're able to see replays, be at TV, kind of be in your relaxed clothes. So with that being said, though, everybody find us on Instagram and Twitter at PacersPodSTP. He's at _FACCI. I'm at Alex Golden NBA. We're on Facebook and we're on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And we're also on YouTube at youtube.com/Setting the Pace, a Pacers podcast where you can find all of our video content. I want to thank everybody for jumping in on the last episode and commenting on that. We had over like 100 comments about what's wrong with Tyrese Haliburton. So, some trolls in there, but also some serious concerned Pacer fans. But I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. And Facci, if you're hoping the Pacers can bounce back and get a victory against the Orlando Magic, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!